My story of growing up. My name is Ida. Growing up, I always felt invisible compared to my older sister, Teresa, who was 3 years older than me. Our parents gave her everything: new phones, stylish clothes, the best laptop, while I got whatever she no longer needed. We weren't poor, but it seemed like my needs didn't matter. The only person who noticed was my grandmother. Every time she visited, she would frown at my hand-me-downs and secretly give me money. "Buy something just for yourself," she'd say. Unlike my parents, she truly cared about me. She asked about my school, my friends, and my dreams. By the time I was 16, I had had enough. I was tired of being treated like an afterthought, so I got a job at a cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but I felt proud knowing that everything I bought with my own money was truly mine. My grandmother often visited, watching me work with a proud smile. The birthday party. When Teresa turned 19, my parents threw her a grand party. They rented a fancy venue, ordered expensive food, and invited many guests. I helped set up but stayed in the background as Teresa basked in attention. Then, my father gave a speech, announcing with pride that Teresa had been accepted into Preston University, an elite private college. "We've saved for this since she was a child," he said, making it clear they had done everything to ensure her success. That's when Grandma stood up. Her voice was calm but firm. "That's wonderful for Teresa," she said, "but what about Ida? Have you saved for her college too?" The room fell silent. My parents looked caught off guard. My mother hesitated before saying, "Ida isn't really college material. She'll probably keep working at the cafe." Grandma wasn't having it. She pulled out my latest report card: straight A's, even an A+ in chemistry. "These don't look like the grades of someone who isn't college material," she said sharply. "Have you ever even asked Ida about school?" My parents looked embarrassed. We didn't know," my dad admitted. "Of course you didn't," Grandma replied. "You're too busy focusing on Teresa." Then came the truth: my parents had spent all their savings on Teresa's tuition. There was nothing left for me. Grandma shook her head. "Fine. I will pay for Ida's education, every single penny, because someone has to treat both girls fairly." I felt a mix of gratitude and sadness. Teresa looked down at her cake, avoiding my gaze. A new beginning. After that party, my parents became cold toward me, acting as if I had set them up to be embarrassed. When Teresa left for college, our home became even quieter. My parents barely spoke to me, only acknowledging my achievements with forced smiles. I worked hard, kept my grades up, and eventually got accepted into State University. It wasn't as prestigious as Preston, but it was my path to freedom. Grandma was thrilled, but my parents only gave me a generic congratulations before turning the conversation back to Teresa. In college, I finally found happiness. I stayed in the dorms and spent holidays at Grandma's house. I visited my parents occasionally, but our relationship remained distant. Years later, I graduated and got a job at a respected marketing firm. I had built my own success, without my parents' help. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. My life and wedding. I had my own apartment, a good income, and a career that made me proud. My life was independent, and I was finally away from the shadow of my older sister, Teresa. With my grandmother's support, I was able to create a life on my own terms, separate from my parents. When Teresa got married, my parents went all out. They held a huge wedding at a fancy mansion, spending $500,000 on it. Despite my concerns about their finances, I didn't say anything and just focused on celebrating Teresa's big day. She looked beautiful, and her husband, Gabriel, seemed nice. A few years later, I got engaged to my partner, Connor. We planned a small, intimate wedding and celebrated with close friends and family, including my grandmother. But when Grandma spoke up, everything changed. She reminded my parents of how grand Teresa's wedding had been and asked if they were planning something similar for me. My parents, caught off guard, promised me a beautiful wedding too. A few days later, my mom asked to meet and discuss the wedding. She was shocked when I told her we had a budget of $33,000. She insisted on covering the whole cost of the wedding, just like Teresa's, and told me to choose whatever I wanted without worrying about the budget. I was surprised, but for the first time, I felt like they saw me as their daughter. The wedding was amazing. It was at a lakeside resort. and everything was perfect. My parents seemed proud, and for a moment, I thought our relationship had improved. Grandma was thrilled and thanked my parents for making my day special. Connor and I left the wedding full of happiness, ready for our honeymoon in Hawaii. But when we returned, everything changed. I received an email with a $65,000 bill for the wedding, with a note from my mom saying we needed to pay it. I couldn't believe it. My parents had insisted on paying for everything, but now they were billing us for it. Connor and I were stunned. After a long discussion, we realized we had the money, but it was supposed to go toward our future home. I didn't want to ask my parents about it. I knew this was just another letdown in a long pattern. So, with a heavy heart, I wrote a check for $165,000 to cover the wedding costs, wiping out our savings. As I sealed the envelope, I felt a sense of finality. I'm done, I told Connor, done trying, done hoping. He asked if we should tell Grandma, but I wasn't sure it would change anything. I couldn't bear the weight of it any longer. I can't, I admitted. Grandma was so proud and happy at the wedding, I can't ruin that for her. That night, I lay awake, replaying all the warning signs, their sudden generosity, their insistence on an over-the-top wedding, and their dismissal of my simple budget. I had wanted so much to believe they had changed, and in my hope, I had walked right into their trap just as my life was finally settling into a new normal. Then, one Sunday afternoon, Melanie, a family friend known for her overly cheerful nature and terrible fruitcakes, showed up unannounced with a cake in hand. She breezed into our living room like she owned the place, a reminder of the fake image my parents always maintained. "Oh, darling," she greeted brightly, setting the stage for an awkward encounter. I hadn't seen Aunt Melanie in a while, but she always popped up unexpectedly, saying she was nearby and wanted to check in on my married life. Aunt Melanie, my dad's sister, loved gossip more than anything. Her visits were never quick. She always seemed to be there to gather stories rather than just catch up. "Can I get you some coffee?" I asked, bracing myself for a long chat. "Oh yes, dear, then we can really catch up," she replied, settling onto our couch as if she were staying for a long time. Once we were seated, she wasted no time. "I haven't seen your parents in ages. How are they doing?" I busied myself making coffee, trying to delay my answer. "I wouldn't know," I finally said. "Wouldn't know?" she repeated, surprised. "What do you mean wouldn't know? They're your parents." "I don't talk to them anymore," I said plainly as I handed her the coffee. "But why?" She leaned in, clearly excited for some juicy details. "They threw you such a beautiful wedding, everyone's still talking about it." "I'd rather not discuss it," I replied firmly. 3 days later, my phone blew up with notifications. Aunt Melanie had posted our conversation on Facebook, full of disappointment and judgment. It breaks my heart to see how ungrateful some children can be these days. I just visited my niece, who told me she's cut off contact with her parents, the same parents who threw her a gorgeous wedding. No respect for family anymore. Parents sacrifice everything, and this is how they're repaid. Ungrateful children. Heartbroken family values. Comments poured in. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly criticized me, calling me ungrateful, spoiled, and disrespectful. Even those who rarely got involved were tagging me in harsh responses. But what hurt most was my mother's comment under Melanie's post. "It's true what they say, you never really know your children. Some show gratitude for everything their parents do. Others, you can tell the difference between my eldest and youngest daughters." My mom's words stung like sharp jabs. Something inside me snapped. I was done playing the part of the ungrateful daughter. Trembling, I retrieved the check I had written for $165,000 from my filing cabinet, snapped a clear photo of it, and began drafting my own Facebook post. Since everyone has an opinion about my relationship with my parents, here's the real story. They threw me a beautiful wedding, one I never asked for. I had planned a modest celebration with a $33,000 budget, which I intended to pay myself. They insisted on a grand affair, promising to cover the costs just like they did for Teresa. 1 week after the wedding, they sent me a bill for $65,000, 5 times my original budget. Here's the check I had to write using our house down payment savings. That's why I don't talk to my parents anymore. I hit post before I could change my mind. The response was swift. Relatives who once called me ungrateful were now shocked by the truth. Then, my phone rang. It was Grandma. Her voice was strained as she asked, "Ida, is it true what you posted about the wedding bill?" I took a deep breath and explained everything. How Mom and Dad had ignored my wishes for a simple wedding, forced me into an extravagant one, and then hit us with a $165,000 bill right after our honeymoon. I told her about how Connor and I had to use our house down payment to cover the cost. After a long silence, Grandma finally replied, her voice a mix of anger and resolve. "Those selfish people," she said. "Listen, Ida, focus on taking care of you and Connor, I'll handle your parents." "Grandma, you don't have to," I began. "No, I do," she interrupted. "I've watched them treat you like you're second-rate your entire life, and this is a new low. Don't worry about them, I'll take care of it." After hanging up, I spent the next hour blocking my parents on every communication platform, phone, email, social media. I was done with their games, done with their manipulation, done with hoping they would change. A week later, while I was making dinner alone, Connor was working late. I heard an aggressive knock at the door. I opened it to find my mother, red-faced and furious. "How dare you?" she shouted as she barged in. "How dare you run to your grandmother with your lies?" "I didn't lie. You sent me a bill, I paid for it, and now you're showing everyone the truth. You've ruined everything." She was almost hysterical. "Now your grandmother changed her will because of you. Do you know what you've done?" Her words hit me hard, but I stayed calm. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "She's leaving almost everything to you, the house, her savings, everything. Teresa gets only a little, and your father and I get nothing, and it's all your fault." I slowly pieced it together. "That's why you insisted on paying for my wedding," I said. "You expected to get that money back from Grandma's inheritance." "Exactly, that's why. But now look what you've done. We're drowning in debt, and you've turned Grandma against us." I couldn't help but laugh, which only made her angrier. "Well, you just got $165,000 for my wedding, that should help with your debt," she snapped. My mom's face turned even redder. "We already spent that money, but that's not the point. You need to fix this. Go to your grandmother and tell her we've made up, that it was all a misunderstanding." "No," I replied firmly. "What do you mean now you owe us this?" "I don't owe you anything." I felt a deep resolve settling in. "I'm done. I don't owe you anything, not anymore. Your financial problems are yours to fix. I won't lie to Grandma just to help you get money you never deserved." Before she could hurl another insult, I opened the door wider and motioned for her to leave. When she hesitated, I gently but firmly pushed her out. She screamed and pounded on the door for about 15 minutes before finally leaving. The next day, Teresa called, accusing me. "How could you do this to them? They gave you everything, just like they gave me, and this is how you repay them?" "They didn't give me anything, Teresa, they sent me a bill," I said. "They're your parents, they sacrificed so much for us." "No," I corrected, "they sacrificed for you. I was just your backup plan." Teresa called me cruel and heartless before hanging up. In that moment, I realized I had lost my sister too, and strangely, I was okay with it. I continued to see Grandma regularly. She came over for dinner every Sunday, and we talked on the phone almost every day. When people asked if I missed my family, I always said, "I miss the family I wished I had, not the family I was given." Over time, I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is close the door on toxic relationships, even if it means cutting ties with your parents. Standing up for myself cost me my relationship with my parents and my sister, but it also freed me from a lifetime of manipulation and disappointment. It wasn't an easy decision, but it allowed me to live by my own values and truth, surrounded by those who truly cared about me. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe for more great stories. Don't forget to tap the notification bell, so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments, we love hearing from you. See you next time, and take care.